Welcome to Invest Insights. I'm Abby Maloney. I'm joined today by Brian Johnson, the city manager of the city of Peachtree Corners, Georgia. Brian, it's great to have you.
Oh, thanks for having me.
While filled with challenges stemming from the pandemic, 2020 offered opportunity to reflect and reevaluate priorities and address inefficiencies. With this in mind, how has the city transformed its thinking as it relates to top priorities, and how is this reflected in the budget for 2021? For example, how has this affected any future capital improvement or infrastructure projects?
Well, the pandemic has affected the city, like it has really affected every aspect of our lives. We're in the business of service delivery. Our job is to deliver services to our residents, and sometimes the services our residents demand change. And in the pandemic, that is no different. First and foremost, we have been mostly at the local government level, a conduit of information. We have not been like currently, we're not the direct, purveyor of vaccines. That's done at a, county health department level or a state level. And we've been in a state that the governor has, enacted a statewide, public health emergency. And so we've kind of been the conduit of flow of information between other governmental entities or levels of government and our residents. So the first maybe thing we did is had to ratchet up that level of communication, both the unsurety of this pandemic and the shelter in place and what can you do and what can't you do and where can I get this and what's open and is, all those things that everybody's been, unsure of. We found ourselves being looked at as a source. And so we kind of realized that, we needed to enhance and increase our activity. And we did so by doing a number of things, both really, expanding the amount of details that we put in it. We started doing events like multiple times a week. I would do Facebook Live sessions to talk about some of the updated things. And then the other thing we did is, even during the shelter in place and other times as we've kind of ebbed and flowed through the pandemic, not all services have stopped. There have been things like construction projects and even certain places of employment and establishments have stayed in business, even if it's for odd, unique hours or things like that. And so we had been uniquely positioned prior to the pandemic, having already basically made all of our city services that somebody would need from us to be available remotely or virtually. And so we already had a very robust online presence before this. We tweaked it a little bit, but that's just a long way of saying that the other role that we felt we needed to kind of enhance was the communication that a resident of the city could essentially do everything they wanted to do without ever having set foot in City Hall.
Sure.
They could pay the utility bills, they could submit site plans and rezoning applications and whatever virtually without actually having to meet in purpose or in person. We were, meeting with people virtually, essentially day one, even before the pandemic. So those were kind of the things that immediately we saw our role change. We also did kind of, embrace the fact that we are in the business of providing services to the public, so we should be the last organization that should shut down. And so we took pride in ensuring that really there was no disruption in service. We were not closed for service. We did not stop construction projects or public works projects or anything. We kept going. And so that's kind of how we did that. Now it does affect, even us directly. As you ask, there are future capital improvements that will be influenced by the pandemic in one way or the other. There are revenue streams that are not going to be coming in the same that they always have. The one that jumps out to us, or the two are, sales tax and business license
Right.
revenue that are tied to, point of sale transactions. And when less people are doing it at bricks and mortar locations or doing it at all in some cases. There's going to be less of that. But we also have seen other things, like we have taken a step back on certain transportation
Right.
enhancements because traffic pattern has changed with the pandemic, and not just the shelter in place part where less people are going. We're probably staring at a new normal, even when this pandemic has passed us. And so there are some projects that we were looking to do to address traffic, congestion issues pre-pandemic, and they're not as much of an issue right now, and they may not be for a longer period of time. So our money may be well served going somewhere else. So it does require us to reevaluate all our projects. But again, we're not unique. Everybody's dealing with this in their own way, and the city's no different.
Being based in the Atlanta metro area, it's nice to hear that traffic is not as big of a problem for you.
And yeah, I didn't say it wasn't a problem. It's just not as big of a problem.
When we spoke to the city for our Focus Atlanta report, the mayor said that there had been a lot of intentional urbanization over the last few years for Peachtree Corners. How has having entities within the city like Tech Park continued to further this transformation from a bedroom community to an urbanized city? And how have the changes related to the pandemic either slowed or sped up this process?
Well, so one thing of note, real quick, is that we really have never been a bedroom community, in that we were created as a city out of the creation of Tech Park Atlanta, which was Metro Atlanta's very first technology park. And as jobs were created here, then developers said, you know what, at the same time, let's build houses. And both of them kind of expanded together. People want to live close to where they work, especially in an area that has traffic congestion problems. And so over the, decades since Tech Park was created, we basically grown jobs and residents at the same clip. So we're about 45,000 people and about 45,000 jobs. Now, that being said, the pandemic and the fact that we are a suburb of a large metropolitan area, and as happens everywhere, urbanization and density start at the middle. It's like the pebble in the in the pond, and then concentric rings start to emanate from that core, and we're there. So we are under some pressure to have the density of the city to increase and more urbanization. Some of it we have embraced in places like our town center. We built essentially the second half of a downtown. Sure. And recently opened it about 2 years ago. And there were designed urban projects within our town center. We wanted more urban units within our town green and that kind of stuff. But now it is happening in other places, and I'll tell you, the pandemic is affecting it because of how virtual or remote working is changing. So at least in Atlanta, and I from what I read, every other metro area, what you have is you have this urban core of jobs in downtown Atlanta here, in which a lot of people work. Fortune 500 companies down there, buildings with tens of thousands of employees. A lot of people felt the need to live as close as they could so that their commute was not, a major detraction on their quality of life.
Right.
As the remote working has changed that, people are realizing that, look, my employer is either going to let me work from home a lot more or completely. I don't have to live 5 miles from downtown to avoid an hour-long commute every morning and another one on the way home. I can move out to the suburbs and have a better quality of life, have a house and a yard and a white picket fence and the 2.5 kids, the whole American dream.
Sure.
And maybe have one in a more proverbial way. And so now there is a push of interest in housing out here in the suburbs, where 20 miles to the south of us in downtown Atlanta, That used to be where you needed to work if you didn't want to have a long commute. So that has definitely affected our urbanization. The pressure on us to
Mhm.
improve density has significantly increased, and also the pressure on rental versus ownership is also decreased. There are a lot more people who are looking at, look, I want to get out of the city where maybe, rules and regulations related to the pandemic are even, tighter, and there's less room to spread your wings in a safe way. And there's a lot of uncertainty with the economy and with their jobs. And so they're not wanting to buy right now, they're wanting to rent. And so we are under a lot more pressure of late than we have been on housing units in general, ownership products too, but also the rental versus ownership. So, it's a phenomenon of being in a metro area like we are. It brings both opportunities, but also some challenges.
Indeed. How is the city of Peachtree Corners implementing technology to further transform and strengthen the residents' relationship with city governance? Like, for example, what has been the residents' reaction to recently implemented technologies like PC Fix It?
All right, well, I'll start with that last one. So you mentioned the PC Fix It app, which was an app the city actually put in place a number of years ago. And it's an app where you can actually communicate with the city on requests for service, essentially. Anything from, there's a dead deer in the road, can you come please pick it up, or a pothole, or whatever. What we have done since then is we have really loaded a lot more stuff onto, well, we've created a city app, not just an app to do what I just said, but a city app that does more than just communicate, call, request for service. Now, the PC Fix It component, the ability to communicate with the city for request for service, is part of our app, but our app is a lot more than just that thing now. Now you can handle actually interactions with the city in some cases, over applications for site plans. You can find out listings of all our restaurants and their hours and look at parks. You can reserve space in some of our facilities. You can do a lot within our app. It has geofencing, so if you it'll let you know. It'll start sending you messages that are Peachtree Corners specific when you hit our boundaries, because it then knows that you're in our weather, specifically events at our town, green, those kind of things. And so if somebody wants really to be, all things Peachtree Corners because they, live here and or work here, then it's been received very favorably. So that's one way we've done things. I mentioned earlier about we were very well positioned with a very robust online presence before this,
Correct.
but we have enhanced it even more. There is really no service now that you can't do remotely and communicate with the city, including, again, exchanging large data sets when it comes to construction documents. I mean, even complex things that normally you would not have done. And we have increased the amount of live streaming events, including public meetings like city council meetings, planning commission, zoning board of appeals. We have installed digital kiosks at public spaces throughout the city for us to, so from one location at City Hall, we can send out messages that hit various locations of the city simultaneously on what are essentially touchscreen digital message boards. And
Interesting.
so, these could be like a digital kiosk that's at our town center that normally somebody would go up and punch in what restaurants are there, but then we can, when somebody's not using it, run public service announcements across it, whether it's public health messages or what have you. Just those are some of the little things that we're trying to do. Again, as I started, we very much are embracing that conduit between our residents and other regulatory and governmental entities that we may be getting information to a little bit quicker than them, or maybe have a little bit more, detailed information than they normally have access to. So that's just some examples of, some of the things that we're doing, but we're well positioned. We're a tech, we came out of, we're created out of tech. We, mayor and council very much embrace technology. The residents have embraced technology. And so we're uniquely positioned to push the envelope on technology where some cities would not be inclined to do. So we're pretty blessed here.
Yeah. And I mean, that transformation has obviously been something, a part of how the city was founded, transformation of technology. And we've seen so much this year, how people have transformed the way that they work, the way that they interact. You've talked a lot about how the city has transformed this past year, but I wanted to end by asking how you personally have transformed this past year.
Well, I mean, I've learned to be able to, I can wear a mask for long periods of time and not lose my mental health while I'm doing it.
Important.
But, I joke, but, I would imagine, like a lot of people, we have been forced to, increase our level of patience when things are not the way they used to be. We've been forced to look at ways to derive, joy out of things that are not the proverbial things. I mean, as much as I would love to be in Cabo San Lucas right now and enjoying myself, I can't. So I've got to find other ways to do it. And, I think it's forced us to have a more open mind, be a little bit more patient with the situation, derive things, joy and satisfaction out of things we didn't normally, derive them from. And I think in hindsight, I personally have, seen that there have been some things maybe with the family that you normally would not have done because you would have been distracted with other things and now you couldn't do it, or home improvement. It's almost like forced us to slow down a little bit, not live life as fast as we normally were, for better or for worse. And, I've been able to accomplish things that I probably would not have had the time to accomplish. So, all of our mental health is, addressed in different ways. Some people, again, it's easier, some it's harder, but we're all in this together. So I guess the old adage of, misery loves company probably is true, as I'm not the only one going through it. Everybody else on the planet is too. So
that's for sure. Well, I like the idea of reconvening in Cabo when this is all over.
Yeah, there we go. I do too. I like that idea too.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you again. That was Brian Johnson, the city manager of the city of Peachtree Corners, Georgia. My name is Abby Malone, and you've been watching Invest Insights. Brian, thank you again.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel so that you can stay up to date on the latest business trends from our knowledgeable experts. Be sure to check out the description below for more information on the segment you just watched. Thanks for tuning in.